When did the class clown take it too far? I knew a guy, a high school student in the late 60s. He and his best friend were very close, but he also dated the same girl. My buddy dated this girl first, and now the friend was dating her. No problems, but they both understood how this could be perceived as a potential friendship ender. They had a joke all planned out. The best friend grabbed some ketchup packets from a fast food restaurant. After lunch, he sat in class with his pockets torn slightly, tucked unnoticeably in his hand. My buddy had the starter pistol from the track and field team, and, well, you can see where this is going. My buddy ran into the classroom and shouted, "You can't steal my girl from me! If I can't have her, no one can!" And he fired the starter pistol, filled with blanks, not bullets, still dangerous, in the direction of his best friend. The friend, who had jumped up from his desk during the shooting, clutched his chest with the fake bullet wound, sending horrifying streaks of red ketchup flying all over his white t-shirt. He collapsed. The look of horror on the face of every student in the room, my buddy said, was amazing. He and his best friend both got detention. Sometimes I think about this story and I wonder what would happen if high school students tried this in a post-Columbine world. It is crazy how much things have changed with time in just a couple of generations. One time, the class clown asked what the teacher's wife, another teacher, was like in bed. It was so goddamn awkward. Better than your mother is the only acceptable answer. No matter your gender or sexuality, it is the only acceptable answer. Someone in my year at high school who wanted to be a doctor drank a bottle of antibacterial hand wash for $5. He did it because there's nothing bad in there, his words. Needless to say, he got his stomach pumped. When he ate part of the squid we were dissecting, stomach pump for you, Chuckles. Similar story, when I was in middle school, we needed to dissect a perch. We were allowed to pick our own groups, but because I didn't have any friends in the class, I got stuck with the obnoxious kids. One of them had this so genius idea of putting his mouth up to the fist and sucking it like a straw. He ended up throwing up. When I was in third grade, we were all doing our thing, coloring, reading, etc. The class clown was being really noisy and kept goofing off. We were all having fun, and the class clown eventually sat down. It wasn't long before he was laying on the floor, foaming out of his mouth, shaking violently. We all laughed. It was a joke, right? Before long, the teacher came rushing over to see the new joke the kid came up with. She immediately called 911, and he was rushed out of the room. He had a seizure while the whole class thought he was joking. He recovered, though, and everything was fine. I just feel bad for the kid. Holy frick, that's terrifying to imagine. Imagine somebody saying, "Help, I can't breathe," and your friends are all just like, "Good one, man," and then you pass out and shit goes down. God, that's freaky. A kid, class clown, in elementary school made fun of a boy that no one liked. He was kind of an asshole, but one day the boy said that his mom had a miscarriage, and the other kid thought that it'd be a great insult later in the week to tell him something along the lines of, "Your brother is better off dead. It's a good thing your mom had a miscarriage." I don't think we've ever rallied for this whole kid as hard as we did that day. Not cool. There was a class clown in my class and another one from a senior class at the time. They'd collaborated to throw toilet paper all over the schoolyard as a joke. I forget exactly what it was, but there was some kind of very important event going on that day, and we were supposed to have a lot of visitors that afternoon. The principal was not amused. He said that if they had done that on any other day, he would just let it go after making them all clean it up. They got detention, and one of the teachers made them personally apologize to the elderly janitor who had to clean all that it up in the dark when it was cold. Yeah, the janitor found the mess when he had gotten to school that morning, so it was still dark around 6 a.m. or so. He started cleaning it up himself before anyone knew who did it. The officer pulled the footage from the outdoor security cameras later that morning. Because it was such a small school, the dudes were identified about 30 seconds. So, yeah, Lamau. Junior year in high school in Algebra 2, the teacher was kind of a douche, so this one guy, let's call him Mike, would give him a hard time. This was a regular thing, and Mike would get kicked out of class for saying and doing some inappropriate stuff, but we all thought it was hilarious. And one day our teacher didn't show up to class. Word got around that his oldest son had passed of a hard drug overdose and had to take some personal time off. He didn't show up for a week, and he looked really sullen and down. During class, Mike pulled out a can of Coca-Cola and started sipping it nonchalantly. Well, the teacher had a strict no eating or drinking in class policy, and Mike was aware of this. He told Mike to throw it away and step outside. Mike, the absolute king savage, says, "Look, I know you don't like Coke, but I'm sure your son did." Nobody laughed. Silence. Some people didn't get it. The other ones who did were just too shocked to say anything, like me. Mike threw his drink away and walked out of the classroom while the teacher sort of just hazardly continued his lesson, although we could tell Mike's comment him up. I was at an all-state music festival, basically a concert band that students from the entire state audition had to perform during in high school, and during some downtime between pieces during the rehearsal, the conductor asked if anyone wanted to come up and say a joke into the mic. One of the percussionists raises his hand, he walks up, and he tells the following joke. "What do you call a kid with no friends? A shooting survivor." I absolutely couldn't believe what I heard. This was weeks, or maybe a few months after the shooting. I don't remember if anyone laughed. I don't think they did, and he definitely got a stern talking to. In my English class, we all tried to be class clowns most of the time. However, the one time time my friend took it too far was at the end of the class. The teacher would go around picking up all the textbooks from each table while we stood waiting, and then the teacher came around to collect his textbook, and he lifted it up, and my friend had unzipped his trousers and pulled his wanger through and hid it under the book. She screamed, and everyone else was so shocked at the sight of him standing up with his just wanger flopped out on the table, but before anyone could say anything, he looked down and pretends to scream in fright as well, as if he didn't know what he was looking at. He lifts his arm up and he pretends to karate chop his own Johnson in front of the teacher and the entire class. The lad got excluded for a day and then got put in the new English class. There's this kid in class that's struggling financially in life. He's a kind kid though. We'd hang out sometimes and we're kind of close, so let's call this kid Francis. One day it was raining real hard and Francis rarely goes to school when the weather is bad because he can't afford to commute by public transportation and his family didn't own any vehicles. Plus, it was January, so when he did get to school on a rainy day, I was surprised. He walked all the way here with an umbrella. The day went by and it was almost over, and the weather was still rainy and we were about to go. We were chatting and laughing and we failed to expect the holes in Francis's umbrella. The class clown, let's call him Martin, laughed, pointing at Francis. Francis was a small 4'8" kid at my height in 8th grade. Martin would always bully him for that, which seems funny to him, but it isn't for the class and Francis. But this time, what Martin did to Francis made Francis cry. He explained to me that the umbrella he had was something that his family got for free last Christmas. The fact that Francis is barely getting by and had a valuable item of his destroyed made me furious. But I didn't want to say anything because Francis told me not to tell the teacher. Although the next day, the teacher addressed an issue that somebody's umbrella was gotten busted. Francis went totally silent and Martin was looking away. The whole class speculated that Martin did it, and the teacher confirmed it. Martin was called for detention and was asked if he could buy Francis a new umbrella. He had to do charity work for a week. James took friendly jabs way too far with a girl that he hardly knew. It got to a point where he basically borderline verbal abuse. I'm not kidding. Bless her patience. She kept it together far longer than I would have. But one of those jabs struck a nerve with her. As a result, James needed new stitches on his brow after getting a solid kick to the balls, followed by another one to the head, with a pointy and hard high heel. Idiot's lucky it didn't gouge his eye out. This didn't happen in class. This was in office. Turned on a Bunsen burner gas tap in science class and lit it. It was pointed straight at him, so a giant flame hit him square in the chest, melting his school jumper, burning through his shirt, and somehow only giving him minor burns. Luckily, a kid with quick reflexes turned it off, ending the giant flamethrower before it could set the entire room on fire. The really attractive, popular girl was chatting on the school field. Class clown took a skateboard off someone and decided to draw attention to himself by riding it down the path towards her. I think in his 13-year-old horny brain, he was gonna impress her with his daredevil skills. Then he was gonna accidentally on purpose fall/leap off and grab her for support. I assume his horny brain made him think that the worst case was she would get knocked to the floor and that he could use this opportunity to grab her hand and pull her up again. What actually happened is that he went way too fast and smashed into her. He then landed very heavily on top of her. She couldn't move and was fully screaming, saying she couldn't move and she couldn't feel her legs. We all thought her back was broken. Teachers came running, an ambulance had to be called on the school field. She got taken away in a stretcher and a neck brace. Luckily, it wasn't broken, and she was okay after a little bit in the hospital and a few weeks off school. Not sure what actually was wrong with her, sorry. Class clown moved to Australia not long after, so he got lucky there. I imagine he stays awake at night thinking about this. Our funny teacher thought it was worth mentioning that the class clown got the lowest grade on an assignment in the class, and teach us a lesson about what happens when you goof around all day long and you don't pay attention. What everyone thought was funny, since the kid was usually very upbeat and happy, resulted in him getting so embarrassed that he ridiculed the teacher for being morbidly obese, single at 60 years old, and bald. No one understood why he would say such hurtful words as a clapback. No one laughed, but he was chuckling and he brushed it off. Our teacher quietly got up, as it was dead quiet, took a deep breath, flung a desk across the room, and yelled at the top of his lungs to get the hell out of his classroom. I swear you could hear the building shake. Once he cooled down, he apologized, but you could hear the hurt in his voice. Our class was given a worksheet and no one said a word. He was at his desk the entire rest of the class, trying not to break down, and at one point exited the room to talk to the teacher next door, who was concerned and heard the whole thing. They ended up changing the kid's schedule completely around mid-school year just to switch into another teacher. No one found him funny after that. Honestly, teacher's a piece of shit as well. He intentionally embarrassed one of his students about his grades. That's horrible. Don't serve it up if you can't eat your slice, you know? Interesting choice of writing. Not sure if that pun was intended. Kind of dark, though. Anyways, I went to a Christian school. We had an ethics class taught by a nun. Class clown began joking about religion, asking about of St. Peter, lewd comments about Virgin Mary and other stuff I couldn't fully remember or was too young to understand. The nun got so flustered her entire face turned red, and you could definitely see how angry and mad she was at the time and how embarrassed she was. She held out a rosary and asked the whole class to pray together for the class clown's soul and begged Jesus to lend us the power to fight against the demon invading our class, all while the clown kept jumping around and poking at the praying kids. She attempted to exorcise the kid. She went to him and whispered something into the kid's ear. Tears began falling down his cheek and the nun accompanied them outside. I never saw him again. Officially, it was said that he got transferred. There's a lot of wrong with this story. What did she say? Probably like, "This is why your father left you. Nuns are masters of shame and guilt. They get right to the core of you. This is probably exactly what she said. He superglued his shoe onto the tile floor. We all saw it happen, but the teacher didn't. The bell rang to move on to the next class, and we all remained seated to figure out what was going to happen. He began to pull his foot up, and with it comes the tile attached to his shoe. The whole class was dying of laughter, and the teacher cracked a smile and then quickly wiped it off her face. He then was escorted to the principal's office while the tile was attached to his shoe while he was still wearing it. I still remember the clack of the walk while he was being escorted.